Hello, this is AnlineOffline. Welcome back to another casual quick guide to Call of Duty Mobile. For today's video, we'll be covering the Renetti. Introduced in Season 3 of 2021, the Renetti is a select-fire handgun from Modern Warfare 2019 and is based on the Beretta 92, specifically the modern M9A3. Both semi-auto and Raffica variants are recurring weapons in the Infinity War and Treyarch games. But when it comes to the latter, only Black Ops 4 and Cold War are proper Rafficas. At the turn of the 20th century, high-capacity self-loading pistols were phasing out revolvers. Beretta of Italy was no exception. Their Model 1915 would be adopted as their national service sidearm and would continue to evolve. After World War II, Beretta diverged from their previous blowback designs in favor of a short recoil breechlock inspired by the German Walther P38. Combined with a double-action single-action trigger, an improved alloy frame, and double-stack magazines, the 92 series was born. Stanag 4090 declared 9x19 as the standard pistol cartridge of NATO, and America needed a replacement for their aging 1911s. The Joint Service Small Arms Program pitted these Wonder 9s against one another. Two finalists emerge, once partners, now rivals. Because of its cheaper price, the former was designated the M9, but the latter later got the lesser role of the M11. But the transition to 9mm was not without criticism. The exposed barrel is susceptible to debris and can get hot. The slide-mounted safety was awkward when reloading, and the lack of maintenance led to overused pistols in circulation. During the mid-2000s, the Joint Combat Pistol Program sought a replacement to bring back stopping power and introduce modularity, but was suspended. In response, the Marine Corps' A1 adjusted the ergonomics, added a one-slot rail, and coated the mags to resist sandy conditions. The A3 offered an angled-up safety, more slot rails, removable tritium sights, a threaded barrel for suppressors, and additional finishes. Ultimately, when it came down to finally replace the M9, 6 Hours P320 would come out on top as America's new M17 M18. No longer America's frontline secondary, it remains a popular choice worldwide and enjoys many variants. The most unique spin-off would be the short-lived 93 Raffica, a select-fire machine pistol with a distinct folding foregrip that was designed for counter-terrorism. Moving on to Call of Duty's Renetti. Unlike 2019, which was semi-auto by default with an optional burst mode, mobile is burst only. Base damage per shot is moderate, killing in 4 shots at first and then dropping to 5. Within the 3-round burst, the fire rate is 750 rounds per minute, but has a punishing 300 millisecond delay in between each. Headshots deal double damage, and the chest and arms are 60% extra. It could 2-shot kill, but that would require multiple headshots. The Renetti technically has infinite one-burst potential in multiplayer, but is increasingly more difficult from afar. Thus, it's a high-risk, high-reward weapon. Before, it was believed that trigger attachments had little to no effect, but with the advanced stats and weapon comparison page, they have some merit. Lightweight trigger increases its fire rate from 750 to 833. For reference, that's the difference between the PDW and QQ9. It barely affects its delay, but the faster burst makes it a more spammable weapon by a couple of frames. However, it indirectly increases its recoil. What was said about lightweight also applies to the match grade trigger, but to a lesser extent as the fire rate will be 789 rounds per minute, or a little slower than the cordite. It does slightly improve blue at the cost of worse hipfire. Heavy duty trigger decreases its fire rate to 625 like the KN44. Usually I would never suggest this trigger, but in the case of the Renetti there is a niche. Because it shoots slower, the recoil is more manageable at longer ranges. Although, the one burst time to kill is no longer exceptionally fast up close. In terms of mobility, the Renetti is standard for the pistol class, but unlike some of the other handguns, the Renetti does not have attachments to boost its movement speeds. Base mag size may seem large at 15 rounds, but that's only 5 bursts. It can be extended to 7 and 9 bursts with larger magazines. You'll be reloading often, and cancelling could be better. When empty, you can cancel just before you rack the slide. But with spare rounds, you have to wait several frames after you let go of the inserted mag, which could throw you off. As for accuracy, the ADS bloom is very good, as expected of a burst weapon. Hipfire is standard for its class, but the slow burst makes it a risk. The iron sights are simple to use. The recoil of the final round in each burst is something to account for. Either predict it, or aim for the head and then pull down. The only attachment that can noticeably affect its recoil is heavy duty trigger. When it was first released, the options for a non-melee secondary were limited. The flash guard on the MW11 was nerfed a while back. J3 revolver was niche, and akimbo deagles were dominant. The last option was nerfed the following season, but the transition to an SMG meta and emphasis on mobility made slower firing weapons harder to track with. In 2022, it received an unspecified buff, which I assume was to its range, because there's no other mention and the original values don't match the current ones. In 2023, burst delay was shortened significantly and underwent optimization. So what do I think about it now? I think it has the potential to be a solid secondary for finishing off players. Do not be like me for much of this gameplay. Do not use it like a primary. Use a suppressor, it's loud. Bullet spread and range attachments don't matter. In the training room, the longest one burst that I could luckily achieve was at 75 meters on a steel bot with a heavy duty build. A couple of years ago, you could have made the argument that the Renetti was better than the M16, but that's no longer the case, as it's a much easier and more well-rounded weapon, which would make sense given that it's a proper primary. Moving on to balance suggestions. Either reduce the burst delay again and keep a recoil, or vice versa. As touched on before, reload cancelling with spare rounds could be better. To make it easier to use and more authentic to its Modern Warfare 2019 counterpart, I would like to add a wildfire style, so-called semi-auto mode, to function like the 1911 or Satcom. Luckily that version's fire rate is compatible with mobile, and with a reduction to its body multipliers, I could see it as a high accuracy, high capacity pistol. And last but not least, akimbo for all pistols to counter melee weapons. We've seen what it does to pseudo-semis and full autos, but we don't know what it'll do to its burst delay yet. But hey, that's just my opinion. This has been a Casual's quick guide. Feel free to suggest what weapons you want to see covered next. My name is On, and I'm off.